I remember the night I made the statement, and if I'm being honest, I didn't think much of it at the time. It was just another dinner with friends, something I'd gotten used to after years of marriage. We were all gathered at our favorite spot, laughing, talking, the usual buzz of friendly chatter in the air. Mark and I were seated across from each other, and as usual, I noticed he wasn't quite as engaged as I was. He had that far-off look in his eyes, the kind of look that told me he was mentally checked out. It wasn't the first time. It wasn't even a big deal. Not at first, anyway. The conversation was flowing smoothly when someone mentioned an upcoming club night. A few of our friends were talking excitedly about going out, but Mark immediately responded with his usual line, "I think I'll skip it." It wasn't unusual. He didn't enjoy clubbing, didn't like the noise, the crowds, the whole vibe. But I couldn't help myself. I said it, right then and there, without thinking. "Men who dislike clubbing are controlling," I said, half laughing as I glanced around at the table. My tone was casual, playful even. I didn't think I was being malicious or anything, just making a comment. But the room seemed to freeze for a moment. Everyone went quiet, and I caught Mark's eyes, hurt, confused, but trying to mask it with a stiff smile. I didn't know then, but that statement would haunt me for weeks to come. The table stirred as the comment sank in. A few of our friends chuckled uncomfortably, unsure how to respond. My best friend, Emma, shot me a quick look, her lips pressed into a tight line. I could tell she wasn't entirely comfortable with what I'd said. But the others? They didn't seem to mind. They knew Mark's aversion to socializing. They thought it was a little strange, sure, but nobody ever really said anything. Mark tried to brush it off, but I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his hand tightened around his glass. "It's not about control, Lena," he said softly, a trace of hurt creeping into his voice. "I just don't like clubbing." His words were calm, too calm, like he was trying not to explode. I laughed it off, as if it were nothing. "Yeah, but every time we get invited out, you always say the same thing. It's like you don't want to be around people, or me." I shrugged, trying to keep the conversation light. But it wasn't light anymore. I could feel the weight of his silence, and suddenly, the atmosphere felt heavy. The rest of the night passed in a strange, awkward haze. Mark became quieter, retreating into himself. I could feel it, his withdrawal from me, from the group, from everything. But I couldn't understand it. I'd made a harmless comment, right? I wasn't accusing him of anything. I was just speaking my mind, as usual. And I wasn't the only one who thought like this. Our friends nodded along with me, though maybe they didn't say it as bluntly. When we got home that night, the tension between us was palpable. Mark didn't say anything. He went straight to the bedroom, and I could hear him getting ready for bed in silence. I tried to talk to him, tried to ease the awkwardness, but he wasn't having it. He didn't want to argue, didn't want to discuss it. I was frustrated, confused. Why was he so upset? "Lena," he said finally, breaking the silence. "I don't think you understand how much that hurt me." I blinked, caught off guard by the gravity in his voice. "What do you mean?" "It was just a joke." "It wasn't a joke to me," he said quietly. "I don't know why you keep saying these things, but it feels like you're trying to control me. It's not about clubbing, Lena. It's about you telling me who I should be, what I should do, just to fit into some idea you have." I didn't know what to say. The words felt sharp in my chest, but I couldn't bring myself to apologize. Not yet. Not when I felt like I was right. I didn't realize then how deep the wound I'd caused really was. The next few days were tense. Mark stayed distant, retreating further into himself, while I tried to convince myself that I was justified. It was just one comment, one little thing that had blown up. But every time I looked at him, I saw the hurt in his eyes, and it made me uncomfortable. I didn't know how to fix it, and I didn't know if I wanted to. Then, something strange happened. My friends, those I thought would have my back, began acting differently. Emma, who had always been my closest confidant, started pulling away. She didn't call as often, didn't text back right away. When I reached out to her, her responses were cold, almost distant. And the others? They seemed awkward around me. They avoided talking about Mark, about the situation, like they didn't want to pick a side. But I could sense it, they were all whispering behind my back, talking about me. I could feel it in their eyes, the way they looked at me as if I were a little too much. Then, at another dinner with the same group of friends, one of them finally spoke up. It was David, of all people, who had always been the quiet one, the observer. He looked at me, his expression a mixture of discomfort and sympathy. "Lena," he said carefully, "I think you might have misjudged the situation a little." I stared at him, confused. "What do you mean?" "I know you think you're right, but maybe you're seeing things through a lens that's not really fair to Mark. He's not controlling. He's just a guy who doesn't like loud clubs." I wanted to argue, to defend myself, but I couldn't. The words didn't come out. Maybe it was the way David said it, or maybe it was because deep down, I knew he was right. But I didn't want to admit it. Not yet. So, I kept going. I clung to my belief that I was justified, that Mark had done something wrong, that I was in the right. But with each passing day, the distance between us grew. And I realized, too late, that my comment hadn't been a harmless joke. It had opened a door I couldn't close. Now, I was faced with the fallout. Mark was gone, and the silence between us was deafening. I hadn't realized it then, but that one careless comment had changed everything. And I didn't know if I could fix it. The days that followed were a blur of silence and missed opportunities. Mark had moved out of the apartment, his things gone, his presence absent in a way I hadn't truly grasped until now. I woke up to an empty side of the bed every morning, and when I went to work, it felt like I was living someone else's life. There was no fighting, no resolution, just a void where our connection used to be. I tried calling him a few times in the first few days. At first, I told myself it was just to check in, to clear the air. But deep down, I knew I wanted him back. I wanted things to be normal again. I wanted him to forgive me, to understand that I didn't mean it, that it was just a slip of the tongue, a thoughtless comment. But every call went unanswered. Every text received nothing but the cold sting of indifference. It was like he was shutting me out completely. Then came the uncomfortable moments with my friends. They no longer seemed as welcoming as they used to be. Emma, in particular, was avoiding me, and I couldn't understand why. She had always been the one to stand by me, no matter what, but now her responses were clipped, her eyes averted. At first, I tried to brush it off. People get busy, right? But I couldn't ignore the feeling that something was wrong. I decided to invite her over one afternoon. I needed someone to talk to, someone who would listen. Maybe I could finally make her see what I was seeing. Mark was overreacting. It was just a joke, wasn't it? People should be able to joke with their partners without it turning into a full-blown crisis. But when Emma walked through the door, I immediately sensed the tension. Her smile was tight, and there was something in her eyes that told me she wasn't happy with me. "Lena," she said softly, her voice almost a whisper. "Can we talk?" I nodded, gesturing toward the couch. Of course. I need to talk to you too. She sat down, but instead of facing me, she stared at the floor, her fingers fidgeting in her lap. It was so unlike her. Emma was never this quiet, never this uncertain. I opened my mouth to speak, but she held up her hand, stopping me. I know you're going through a lot right now, she began, her words slow, as if she was choosing them carefully. But I need to be honest with you. What you said about Mark, it wasn't okay. I froze. I hadn't expected this. Not from Emma. What do you mean? It was just a joke. Emma sighed, shaking her head. Lena, that wasn't just a joke. That was a jab. And I know you didn't mean it to hurt him, but it did. And it hurt me, too. I felt a sharp pang in my chest. What are you talking about? You think I'm in the wrong here? I'm just trying to get through to him. Emma's eyes finally met mine, and for the first time since all of this had started, I saw her disappointment. You don't get it, do you? It's not about clubbing, Lena. It's about how you see him. You're making him out to be this controlling person, when all he's ever done is love you and try to understand you. You need to think about how your words affect people. Her words hit me like a slap. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. She wasn't wrong. I knew she wasn't wrong, but hearing it from her, hearing it from someone I trusted so much, felt like an accusation. A small voice inside me whispered that maybe, just maybe, I had crossed a line. But I pushed it away. I couldn't accept it. Not yet. I didn't mean to hurt him, Emma, I said, my voice shaky. I don't understand why he doesn't want to do the things I enjoy. Why can't he just come out with me? Why does he have to be so distant? Emma's expression softened, but her eyes remained sad. Lena, it's not about him being distant. It's about you wanting him to be something he's not. He's not going to change because you want him to, and frankly, I think you need to ask yourself why you're so focused on trying to change him. I couldn't breathe. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. I had always been the one who stood strong in my beliefs, the one who was sure of myself. But in this moment, I felt small. Emma's words, though soft, were like a mirror, reflecting parts of me I didn't want to see. Are you telling me I'm wrong? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Is that what you're saying? That I'm the one at fault here? Emma didn't say anything at first. She simply watched me, her gaze unwavering. Then, finally, she nodded. I'm not saying you're a bad person, Lena. I'm saying that maybe, just maybe, you need to look at yourself and figure out what you really want. You're pushing Mark away, and I don't think you even realize it. Her words stung, but they were true. I knew they were true. It wasn't the first time I'd pushed someone away because I thought I was right. But this time felt different. This time, I wasn't sure I could fix it. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that the distance between Mark and me was growing every second, and I had no idea how to stop it. Later that night, after Emma had left, I sat in the living room, staring at the empty space where Mark's things used to be. I could still see his jacket draped over the back of the chair, his shoes by the door, the little things that once made this place feel like home. But now, it was all just a reminder of what I had lost. I grabbed my phone and dialed his number again. But as always, it went straight to voicemail. I left a message, my voice trembling as I spoke. Mark, I don't know how to fix this. I don't know what I did wrong, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. I was thoughtless, and I never meant to hurt you. Please, come home. But I knew. I knew that saying sorry wasn't going to fix everything. I didn't know how to fix it. And it terrified me. The next few days passed in a haze. I tried to fill the space with distractions, work, hanging out with friends, keeping busy, but nothing helped. The silence between Mark and me grew louder every day. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit: I had no idea how to live without him. The silence had settled over my life like a heavy fog, one that didn't lift. Every morning, I'd wake up and face an empty bed, the silence of the apartment pressing in on me. I tried to distract myself with work, to focus on anything other than the pit in my stomach that grew with every passing hour, but it was impossible. It felt like everything in my world was falling apart, and I had no idea how to stop it. I had spent the better part of the last few days reflecting on everything that had happened. Emma's words echoed in my mind. I kept telling myself that I hadn't meant to hurt Mark, but the reality was that I had. I had pushed him away in a way I never intended, and now I was faced with the consequences of my own actions. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I had been so wrapped up in my own frustrations that I hadn't stopped to consider his feelings. What if he had been hurting too? What if all the things I had taken for granted had been wearing him down, and my careless words had been the final straw? But now, it was too late. Mark had left, and no matter how many times I called, no matter how many messages I sent, he wasn't coming back. I had lost him. And that thought was like a constant ache in my chest. I went to work the next day, trying to keep up appearances. I put on a smile for my colleagues, did my job, and answered emails like everything was normal. But inside, I was crumbling. I couldn't focus, couldn't concentrate on anything. My mind kept drifting back to Mark, to our arguments, to the way things had been before all of this started. I had been so focused on what I wanted, on what I thought was right, that I hadn't noticed how much I was pushing him away. And now he was gone, and I was left with nothing but regret. At lunch, I met up with Emma again. She had been distant, and I couldn't help but wonder if our conversation had affected our friendship as much as it had affected me. But when she sat down across from me, her expression was different, more guarded, more distant than before. I couldn't figure out what had changed, but I knew something was off. "Lena," she said, her voice low. "How are you holding up?" I smiled, but it was a weak attempt at best. "I'm fine," I said, not believing my own words. "Just, trying to keep it together." Emma nodded, but there was an odd tension between us. She looked at me for a long moment before speaking again. "Mark isn't the only one you've been pushing away," she said quietly. I blinked, caught off guard by her words. "What do you mean?" Emma hesitated for a second before continuing. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened. And I'm not trying to attack you, Lena, but I think there's something deeper going on here. Something you're not seeing." I stared at her, unsure of how to respond. "What are you talking about?" Emma looked down at her hands, as if trying to find the right words. "Lena, you've always been the strong one, right? The one who knows what she wants, who gets things done. But lately, it seems like you've been so focused on Mark, on trying to control him, that you've lost sight of what's really important. It's not just about your relationship with him, it's about you. You've been letting all of this define you. And it's changing you. And honestly, I don't think it's for the better." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I opened my mouth to protest, but nothing came out. The truth of what she was saying hit me harder than I expected. Was I really that person now? Had I become someone so consumed by the need to be right, to have things my way, that I couldn't see how it was affecting the people around me? I don't want to lose you, Lena, Emma said softly, her voice breaking the silence between us. But I also don't want to keep watching you destroy yourself over this. You're better than this. And you need to see it before it's too late. I wanted to scream at her, to tell her that she didn't understand. But deep down, I knew she did. She was right. I had let myself become so fixated on my own dissatisfaction, on my own need for validation, that I hadn't stopped to consider how it was affecting everyone around me. Especially Mark. I don't know how to fix this, Emma, I said, my voice cracking. I don't even know where to start. Emma reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. You start by looking at yourself. And you stop trying to control everything. You can't make Mark love you the way you want him to. And you can't keep pushing him away in the process. I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her words settle in my chest. I wasn't sure if I was ready to hear all of this, but I knew she was right. I had been wrong. I had hurt the person I loved, and now I was left to pick up the pieces. After lunch, I went back to my apartment. I stood at the door for a long moment, staring at the empty space that had once felt like home. It was hard to admit to myself, but I had lost something more than just Mark. I had lost my sense of self, lost the person I used to be. And now I had to figure out how to find my way back. The next few days were a blur of self-reflection and regret. I spent hours thinking about what I had done, about the things I had said to Mark, about how I had treated him. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized how much I had taken him for granted. I had been so focused on my own needs that I hadn't stopped to listen to his. I couldn't change the past, but I could still try to make things right. I knew it wasn't going to be easy. I knew it wasn't going to be a quick fix. But I had to try. I had to be better. I picked up my phone and stared at his number for a long time before dialing. I didn't know what I was going to say, but I had to try. Mark, I said when he answered, my voice trembling. I've been thinking a lot about everything. About what I said, about how I treated you. And I need you to know that I'm sorry. I know I've messed up, and I don't expect you to forgive me right away. But I want to fix this. I want to be better, for both of us. There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and for a moment, I thought he was going to hang up. But then he spoke. I don't know, Lena. I really don't know. I closed my eyes, the weight of his words sinking in. But I wasn't going to give up. Not yet. It's strange how the hardest conversations seem to happen when you least expect them. After everything that had happened between Mark and me, I wasn't sure where to begin or even how to repair the damage. But as the days stretched on, the emptiness in my chest grew more unbearable. I couldn't deny it any longer, I missed him. And no matter how much I tried to convince myself otherwise, I knew I had made a mistake. I stared at my phone for hours, messages drafted but never sent. What could I say that would make a difference? I'm sorry seemed so inadequate, but was there anything else left to say? I had let my own frustration spill over into our relationship, turning something beautiful into something unrecognizable. I had accused him of being controlling, of not fitting the mold I thought he should. But in reality, it was my own insecurities and fears that I had projected onto him. And now, after everything had collapsed, I was left picking up the pieces of a life I had taken for granted. The text I finally sent felt like a desperate attempt to salvage something. Mark, I don't expect you to answer right away, or ever, but I need to say this. I've been reflecting on everything, and I see now how wrong I was. I shouldn't have said what I did. I shouldn't have treated you that way. Please understand, I never wanted to hurt you. You were always important to me. And I can only hope that you can forgive me, even if just a little. I understand if you can't, but I just needed you to know the truth. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. The message hovered there, unsent, for what felt like an eternity. But finally, I pressed send. And I waited. It didn't take long for the reply to come through, though it wasn't what I expected. Lena, I can't pretend like things are okay between us. I've spent too much time trying to make it work, trying to make you understand where I was coming from, but it always felt like you weren't really listening. It wasn't just what you said, it's everything that led up to it. I've tried, and I can't keep doing it. Not like this. I'm sorry, but I need space to figure things out too. His words stung. I knew they were coming, but it didn't make them any easier to bear. I wanted to argue, to tell him that I could change, that I'd do anything to fix it. But deep down, I knew he was right. I couldn't fix this on my own. The damage was too deep. And no matter how much I regretted what had happened, no matter how much I wished I could go back and make things right, I couldn't undo the past. And then I realized something. I had been so focused on Mark, on what I had lost, that I hadn't stopped to think about myself. For the first time in weeks, I took a deep breath and allowed myself to feel. I wasn't broken, I was just human. And maybe it was time for me to start healing, to start moving forward, instead of holding on to what was slipping through my fingers. I walked over to the mirror, staring at the reflection of someone I barely recognized. This wasn't who I wanted to be. I wasn't the woman who could destroy the people she loved out of fear or insecurity. I wasn't the woman who thought that controlling others would make me feel better about myself. I was better than that. And even if Mark wasn't in my life anymore, I needed to find a way to be that woman again. The next few weeks were hard. I couldn't lie to myself and say that I didn't think about Mark constantly. I missed him in ways I couldn't articulate. But the more I focused on my own growth, the more I realized that the end of our relationship wasn't the end of everything. It was just the beginning of something new. I spent time with friends, tried to re-establish connections I had neglected, and found joy in the little things again. It wasn't always easy. There were nights when I found myself staring at the ceiling, replaying the past, wondering where everything had gone wrong. But with each day, I felt a little stronger. Emma and I talked more, too. After our last conversation, I had promised myself that I would listen to her more, that I wouldn't dismiss her advice. She had always been the kind of friend who saw things clearly, even when I couldn't. And slowly, we started to rebuild the friendship that had been strained. We went out for coffee, laughed about old memories, and talked about things other than Mark. It felt good to be reminded of who I was before all of this. But even as I moved on, the idea of closure lingered in the back of my mind. I knew that I couldn't fully heal until I spoke to Mark one last time. I needed to hear it from him, what went wrong, what we had both missed, and whether or not there was any possibility for us to move forward, separately or together. So I reached out again. This time, it wasn't about reconciliation. It wasn't about asking him to come back or begging for another chance. It was about understanding, about giving him the space to say whatever he needed to say. I wasn't ready to let go of the past, not completely, but I knew that I had to. Mark, I don't expect you to feel the same way, and I won't try to change your mind. But I think we owe it to ourselves to have a real conversation about what happened. No arguments, no accusations, just the truth. If you're open to it, let me know when you're ready to talk. The response came a few hours later, short and to the point. I'll meet you tomorrow. I wasn't sure what to expect when we sat down together. The room was thick with unspoken words, the weight of everything that had happened between us hanging in the air. But as we started talking, I realized that this conversation wasn't about getting back together, it was about closure. About acknowledging that we had both made mistakes, that we both had been wrong in certain ways, but that we had learned from it. We didn't come to any grand conclusions, and we didn't promise each other anything. But in that moment, I finally felt at peace. We weren't meant to be. But I would always remember what we had, and I would carry that with me as I moved forward. As he walked out of my life for good, I knew that it wasn't the end of mine. I had learned what I needed to, and now, I was ready to begin again. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally free.